So as I mentioned at the very beginning, my my little homily today centers around the question, where's the focus? If you remember that, you can just tune me out for the next 5 minutes or whatever. Where's the focus? Think about that. When you come to pray, where's the focus? When you think about your problems and your troubles and your work and your family or whatever, where's the focus? Isn't it usually on ourselves? That's what I experience. When I come to pray, I pray about my worries and my aches and pains and my concerns and what's going on in the world and so on. But it's not what's going on, but how it affects me. And how am I going to deal with this, get through this? Now, I'm not complaining. I think that's human nature. If you struggle with it, that's what we all struggle. Even Jesus struggled with that. Usually that first verse of today's gospel we kind of pass over like it's nothing. But think about it for a moment. When Jesus heard that John the Baptizer had been beheaded by Herod, what was the relationship between Jesus and John the Baptizer? Some say they were cousins, at least they were relatives. And John was the first one that came out to preach about Jesus, about the coming of the Messiah. You all know that. And some think that Jesus at first was a disciple of John before Jesus broke off from John and went his own way because their messages were totally different. But they loved each other. And when Jesus heard that John had been brutally beheaded, think about that for a moment. What did Jesus do? He was concerned about himself. And he went off, it says, to a deserted place by himself. Why? To grieve. To understand what had happened and why it happened. Again, that's totally human because we believe Jesus was God, but also totally human. If you've ever had a loved one die, we need to grieve. We need to process that loss. And it doesn't go away automatically or magically. So that's what Jesus was doing. But then the crowds came to him, and you know the story. Instead of Jesus telling the crowds, don't bother me, I got personal work to do here. He had compassion on them, healed the sick, and then of course you know the story of the feeding. So where's the focus? That's the whole point of the scriptures today. Now, the image, of course, is the multiplication of loaves and fishes. And I did a little reading this week because I don't know a lot about making bread. But when I read the description, to me it was such a wonderful meditation of us. Do you know how bread is made? First of all, think about the wheat. After it's grown, it first has to be dried. It must be totally dry. That's us before God. We have to dry ourselves of ourselves. And then it must be crushed. Ground up. You know the process. Isn't that us too? We have to be ground up to let go of some of our selfishness and our sin and our self-concerns. And then once water is added to the flour, and then they put in yeast, the yeast responds to the sugar in the ground up wheat, and it produces the gas, which then causes the dough to rise. And it will continue rising until it's baked, because the heat of the oven deactivates the yeast. Can you make the connection? The heat of life should deactivate our selfishness, the trials, the tribulations, all of that we go through. Again, to get the focus off of us, but on making a new substance, bread. For what purpose? To feed others. That's our job. That's our task as disciples. Now, as I say so often, the scriptures are about us because we're the disciples today, right? What was the disciples' reaction to the problem? The big crowd, first the disciples said, send them away. Isn't that our reaction to when we have problems? To get rid of them. Send it away. Give it to somebody else. We say, it's not my problem. Or the disciples, that's us again, we say, what can I do in this to feed this vast crowd with just a couple loaves and fishes? And again, isn't that our response? Either to send it away, give it to somebody else, not my responsibility, or to say, what can I do? I just have a little. And we often hear stories about children, and I just read another one this week about a 9-year-old girl on her birthday decided she didn't want any gifts, but she was going to collect money to give it to a charity, the charity that drills wells for people in other countries that don't have access to water. She only gathered $220, which, as you know, is not very much. But then others heard about what she was doing, and they joined her, and eventually they raised over $1 million. Isn't that us? Isn't that what we think? What can I do? I just have a little bit. But maybe if we do it, others will join us, and it'll have a great impact on what's going on in the world, or however we would apply any of this. That's the role of disciple. Even though it's little, we do something. And maybe, like the disciples in that day, it will multiply with the help of others. Where's the focus? To get it off of ourselves. I also read a story about a teacher in Canada teaching a 6-year-old children about fractions. Half of the class was native-born Canadians. The other half of the class was refugee children. And she was teaching the fractions about the difference between 1/4 and 1/2. And she asked the children, now if you had a candy bar, what would you prefer? 1/4 or 1/2? The refugee children all said to a person, I only want 1/4. Well, first the teacher thought they didn't quite understand what this was about. So she asked them, why would you want 1/4? Because 1/2 is double. And they said, we only want 1/4 so that other people can have a little of the candy bar too. Isn't that a touching story? That's a disciple. We only want 1/4 so that others can have something as well. That's our challenge. That's what Jesus did for himself, and that's what Jesus did for his disciples, to transform them into his thinking and his actions, his attitudes. Because where's the focus? Last weekend and this weekend we are talking about discerning for our Pastoral Council. Last weekend we had a short video from David Knoll, our chairperson, and this week we have another short video from Ann Baniel, one of our council members, encouraging you to think about becoming a member of the council, or maybe you know of somebody that you think would be good at that. So please.
Hi, I'm Ann Baniel, a member of the Pastoral Council here at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Parish. Today I'd like to take a couple minutes to talk to you about the Pastoral Council and the upcoming discernment process. The purpose of the Pastoral Council is to advise the pastor on pastoral matters, to promote pastoral activity in the parish, and to be the eyes and ears of the parishioners. The Pastoral Council is made up of 12 members, each of whom serves a 3-year term. We discern for 4 new members each year. The Pastoral Council meets August through June on the first Thursday of each month. This year, we are holding an informational session on August 11th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. We invite anyone interested or curious to find out more to join us. On August 25th, we will hold the actual discernment process at 7 p.m. in the sanctuary, using social distancing guidelines. I would ask you to prayerfully consider discerning for counsel and letting the Holy Spirit guide you in this process. On a personal note, Being on the Pastoral Council has inspired me to be more prayerful in my daily life, to reading the Bible on a daily basis, and to listening to the Holy Spirit. Ultimately, this has improved my relationship with God. If any of this sounds interesting to you, please see the website or a bulletin for more information. And thank you for your time today and for your consideration in joining the Pastoral Council. And remember, follow Jesus, serve others.
Thank you for watching this week's homily here at St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. We invite you to join us for liturgy any weekend that you might be in the area. You can contact us at mysaintelizabeth.com or on Facebook. Thank you very much.